Today, what we're going to look at is we're going to be talking about what you can do about those thoughts that seemingly take over your life. When you have these thoughts that you seemingly can't control, that you have constantly, and it seems like they plague you and you can't stop them from taking over your thinking and your feeling. So, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about thoughts like worrying about an upcoming meeting or worrying about an upcoming social engagement or worrying about an upcoming speaking opportunity, right? So many people will wake up in the morning time and they'll go, I'm gonna have a bad speaking day today, right? I've heard so many people say that. I felt that way myself. You just wake up and you just feel like this is not going to be the best speaking day for me. Or you have something coming up. You have a meeting coming up. I've heard this, done this myself. You have a meeting that's coming up and you start to worry about it. And for some people, it keeps them up at night. For some people, they wake up in the middle of the night. They wake up early. They're thinking about it all day long. And they're worrying about whether or not they'll be able to say all the things they need to say. One of the things that they worry about is, will they be able to, for example, introduce themselves, or will they be able to say someone else's name, or will they be able to say this particular word or these words that they need to say in that meeting? Has that ever happened to you? Okay, so when this happens, what happens to you is you try to get rid of those thoughts. You try to stop those thoughts. And so you may do a variety of things to try to do that. You may do some breathing exercises. You may try to meditate or visualize or listen to something. And sometimes you find that no matter what you do, those thoughts just keep flooding back in. They just keep coming in and coming in. And so you feel like it's out of your control. Right? You feel like that there's nothing that you can do about these worrisome, anxious, nervous thoughts. But the good news is that you can do something, and I'm going to provide for you a systematic process that you can use to change, right? To change that thinking, to change those thoughts. And that's what we're going to look at. So I want to just put this up now. How many of you, I'll just leave this up for a little bit. How many of you have ever watched any of my YouTube videos? Hopefully you see this on your screen because it doesn't show me, but okay, good. So you see it, yeah. How many of you ever watched any of my YouTube videos? Just go ahead and answer that while I continue to move through this. So you have a way of thinking right now about certain things in your life. This is not just with speech, but with other things, but we're going to focus in on speech. So you have a way of thinking, right? You have something that's coming up, or you wake up in the morning, or you anticipate. And so that's a way of thinking. Another word for way that we use is pattern, right? You have a pattern of thinking. And so you think the way you think right now, you feel the way you feel, you behave, you speak the way that you speak. Because it's a pattern, it's a way. So a pattern is a usual way of behaving or doing, a usual way of behaving or acting. That's what a pattern is. Some of the synonyms for patterns, very interesting. What do you think some of the synonyms for patterns are? Habit, way, right? Also tendency. Tendency is another synonym, okay? So your current way of thinking, the way that you think right now, those thoughts that keep on plaguing you, that you feel like you don't have any control over, right? The reason that you feel that way, the reason that you believe that you don't have any control is because it's a pattern, it's a habit It's a tendency. So it's something that you do. This is a very, very important word. It's something that you do, what? Automatically, right? It's something that you do automatically. We'll go a little deeper into this in just a few minutes. All right. So let's see. Yes, you have. Okay. So most of you have. All right. I'll just leave that up for just a little bit. And so the question for those of you who are just coming in is how many of you have actually watched any of my YouTube videos? Just want to kind of get a feel. All right. So a pattern of thinking, a pattern of feeling, a pattern of behaving and speaking is a habit. It's a tendency. It's a way, right? Which means that it's mostly automatic. And when something's automatic, when you do it automatically, you feel like you don't have any control over it. This is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's actually kind of neutral, but it's good and it's bad. The reason that patterns and habits are good is because it allows our brains to operate more efficiently. If we had to think about everything that we have to do every day, we would be overloaded. Our brains wouldn't be able to fit in our heads, right? That's why we have the subconscious or unconscious mind that handles a lot of billions and billions of data points, things that you and I don't have to think about, like breathing, or things like tying our shoe or walking, right? These are things that are habit, they're habitual. The same thing with our thoughts, right? Same thing with our thoughts. We have patterns or we have habitual ways of thinking. So when you have something that you worry about or that you think about or that you anticipate on a regular basis, it's because it's a pattern, it's because it's automatic, and therefore it feels like it's something that you have no control over. But the truth is, you can take control over it, right? You can take control over it. So you have a way of thinking right now, right? And so the question is, how do you want to think? How do you want to feel? How do you want to speak? So here's how you think and feel now. How do you want to think, feel, and speak in the future? It's very important that you get that kind of in your mind, because it's very hard to change the way that you think and feel and behave now if you don't know what you're changing it to. Okay. So you kind of get a clear picture. Okay, this is how I think right now. These are some of the thoughts that I'm having. How do I want to think? Do you want to feel? Do you want to think more confidently? Do you want to be able to think more clearly? Do you want to feel more calm and more relaxed? Do you want to feel more confident? Okay, if you do, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And then how do you get there? So there's the gap between where you are now and where you want to be. So let's talk about how we're going to feel or fill that gap. So we're going to talk about a couple of laws that are very, very important. One of the laws is what we call the law of control. The law of control. And this law says that you and I feel calmer, we feel more relaxed, we feel better about ourselves, we feel better about our lives, we feel more confident, and we actually perform better when we believe or when we do have control over our life or over that aspect of our life. So let me say that again. You and I will feel calmer, we will perform better, and we'll feel more confident, we'll perform more confidently when we believe or when we know that we have control over our lives. And we're going to talk more about this in the next webinar, confidence and control. But we'll talk a little bit about it now because it's important. So when you feel like, you know what, there is a way I can control what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling, right? And therefore how I speak, how I perform. There is a way I can control that. You're automatically going to feel calmer. You're going to feel more confident about your speech, more confident about your life. The law of control. When you have more control or you believe you have more control, you feel calmer, you feel more confident. This is important. This is important. Okay. So, how do you exercise this law of control? How do you realize this law of control? And that is what we call the law of substitution, the law of substitution, the law of substitution. Now remember, the purpose of this webinar is to share with you what to do, why you should do it, how you should do it, how often you should do it, and when you can expect results, right? So you think a certain way, you've been worrying about something, thoughts have been plaguing you. What can you do about that? How can you change it, right? Why should you do what it is that I'm telling you? And then how often should you do it? And when can you expect to see results? That's what you're going to get as we walk through this webinar. And the first way that we're going to get to that is by understanding these two laws, but we're going to focus on this law right here, the law of substitution. And this is a very powerful law, and it says that you can substitute or you can crowd out one thought with another. You can crowd out one thought with another. It also says that it's virtually impossible for you to consciously hold or think about two things at the same time, consciously, right? You can't think about two things at the exact same time. You can bounce back and forth, but you can't think about two thoughts at the same time. Let me give you an example. Years and years ago, I, just like you, used to probably worry about upcoming speaking engagements. Will I have to introduce myself, right? If I'm in a meeting, I may have worried about, all right, they're going to go around the table and I'm going to have to introduce myself. I'm going to say my name. Or worse, you're in a workshop, you're in some kind of a training. They're going to go around the table and I'm going to have to read this paragraph. Oh my God, I used to hate that. I used to hate that in school. I used to hate that at work. And so some people were actually skip meetings, they'll cough, they'll pretend that they got a phone call or they have to go to the bathroom or something like that. So as you start to kind of anticipate that, or you have an upcoming presentation, for example, and you start to worry about that upcoming presentation, then you start becoming anxious. You start worrying about it, right? So some years ago, I stumbled upon a different way of anticipating. So you're going to have something that's coming up and you're going to anticipate it. You're going to think about it, either negatively or positively, right? But you're going to think about it. So what I learned how to do was to Rick and Vic my upcoming events, any upcoming presentations, even this webinar, I Rick and Vic'd it. And you're going to learn more about that in the Pro 90D Smooth Speech System, Rick and Vic, but I'll just mention it to you now. And it applies to this law of substitution. So this is part of the answer that you're looking for in terms of I keep thinking things. It feels like I don't have any control. What can I do about it? This is part of the answer. It's the law of substitution. And so what I do is I Rick and Vic things. So what does that mean? Well, it's an acronym. R stands for relevancy. So for example, for this webinar, I just kept thinking about, is what I'm going to talk about relevant to this audience? Is it important to them? And then how can I make sure that it's more and more relevant, it's more and more important to this audience? That's the R. And then the Vic, the V, is this valuable information? How can I make sure that everything I say is valuable? They're not wasting their time, not wasting your time, wasting my time. It's got to be valuable. It's got to be actionable. And then the I is, how can I communicate in such a way that I'm holding your attention, that I'm impacting you, right? That I'm engaging you. How can I hold your attention? And then the C in Rick and Vic is, how can I make sure that what I'm saying is clear, both stylistically and structurally? 1, 2, 3, that it's clear, that you can follow what I'm saying and that I'm articulating what I'm saying as clearly as I possibly can. Okay, so very important. By keeping Rick and Vic in my mind the whole time, so as I'm preparing for the webinar, so I'm thinking about anticipating the webinar. This is just one example. I'm anticipating the webinar. What am I thinking about? Well, some people would be worrying, well, what if I get stuck? This is live. What if I forget something? What if someone asks me a question I don't know about? What if I'm not able to say certain things, right? That's what some people would do. But instead, what I did is I substituted those thoughts, which I don't really think anymore now, and I'll tell you why, and this is what I want you to be able to do. The only thing that I think about now is Rick and Vic, right? That's what occupies, that's what floods my mind is Rick and Vic. And so whenever I think about something that's upcoming, instead of worrying about it, instead of negatively anticipating it, what I'm doing is I'm substituting, I'm crowding out, I'm pushing out those thoughts by replacing those thoughts with Rick and Vic. Okay, this is very, very important. This is attached to this law of control because this tells me that guess what? I can control what I'm thinking, right? I can control how I'm feeling. I can control how I'm speaking because I can substitute, right? I can substitute these negative, distracting, uh, energy draining thoughts with something that's energizing, that's more constructive, that's more valuable, that's more positive. And all I have to do is keep my mind full of these thoughts, right? So that I don't have to think about those thoughts. Does this make sense? Does this make sense? So this law of substitution is very, very important for you. And it gives you power. It gives you control so that you do not have to be worried about. A second, getting some pings here. All right, and hopefully that stops it. You don't have to be worried. You can feel empowered and you can feel in control over your destiny, but also over your thinking, because you know that you have the power to substitute one thought for another. Now, let's talk about some of the challenges that we have with substituting and some of the things that people may think about as they're trying to substitute. You may be challenged by thinking, wow, well, I've tried that, but the thoughts just keep coming back. They just keep coming back. So here's something else that you have to remember. It's called the law of accumulation. Everything that you do accumulates. Everything that you do accumulates, okay? Now, the reason that this is important is because, and I just want you to remember this, it's not so much what you do in the moment that counts. It's what you do in all the moments leading up to that moment that really counts. It's not so much what you do in the moment, meaning it's not so much, I've got a meeting coming up, I've got a phone call, I've got a webinar, let me do some breathing exercises, let me try to substitute these thoughts out. Well, yeah, that can be helpful, but it's not so much what you do right then that's going to actually help, but it's what you've been doing every day, every moment leading up to that phone call, leading up to that moment, okay? So everything that you do today, right now, is going to affect everything that you do tomorrow and the next day and next week. Everything you do accumulates. It has a cumulative effect. It accumulates. So every thought that you think now is going to create a pattern, a habit, a way of thinking tomorrow and the next day and next week and next month and next year. Does this make sense? And we see this in the brain, in neuroscience, something called Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Neurons that fire together, wire together. So they don't just fire together once and wire together, right? Now, this can happen if there's an emotionally charged event, and we'll talk about that. But when neurons fire together, and these neurons represent our patterns of thinking and our patterns of behavior, right? These neural networks. So when the neurons fire together consistently, repeatedly, they wire together, they become stronger and stronger, and they become a pattern, they become a habit. The same thing with your thinking. When you think something over and over, that's represented by the neurons firing together, right? That represents that thought or those thoughts. It also represents those feelings, okay? It also represents your behavior or your way of speaking. So what do you have to do to change how you think and how you feel and how you speak tomorrow and the next day and next week and next month? What do you have to do? Well, you have to change the way that you think now, which changes the way that you feel, which changes the way that you behave, right? You have to do this over time. So I'm going to kind of give you a formula for doing that. I'm going to give you a formula, kind of a systematic way to do that. So here's what you need to remember. Here's what you need to remember. You have to remember that if you want to start thinking, let me just back up. If you want to stop thinking this, right? You want to stop those thoughts that plague you, those negative thoughts, the worrying, the ruminations, thinking back about something, worrying about something, or being anxious, or anticipating certain words and letters. I'm not going to be able to say that. I know I'm going to mess up here. If you want to stop thinking that, and you want to start thinking what? You want to start being more present. You want to start feeling calmer. You want to start positively that is looking forward to speaking experiences and opportunities. You want to feel more confident, right? You want to start that. Then what do you need to do? One thing that you must do is change your inputs. What are you putting into your mind? What are you putting into your mind? There's several areas that you'll need to change, and we're going to talk about those areas right now. One, in fact, I'll just jot these down for you, just so that you can see them. These are things that you may want to jot down, okay? So you want to change your inputs. And this is all scientifically based. This is all proven. You can go out and research this, and you'll find support for this going back decades and decades, but also you'll find some recent support for this as we look at neuroscience and neuroplasticity. So you want to change the inputs. So you're going to change what you read, what you watch, right? What you listen to. This is a big one. What you listen to, right? What you write about, write or type, okay? What you think or say to yourself, self-talk, yourself. And what you talk about with other people, right? What you talk about. What you talk about. So this is important because the reason that you think the way that you think now, the reason that you have the pattern of thinking that you have now is because of all these things here. Let me give an example. I don't hardly watch the news anymore. I remember during COVID, I used to be glued to the TV watching news. How do you think that made me feel when I was watching the news all the time? How did you feel when you were watching news all the time? Well, you start to get anxious. You start getting kind of paranoid. You start getting sometimes angry by watching the news. Why? Because that news was an input. The news is an input. So what I was watching, what I was listening to, what I was thinking about, what I talked about, what I read were all inputs. And so it changed the content of my thoughts. So one of the things that you're going to need to change is the content of your thoughts. Okay. So in order to change the content of your thoughts, you have to change the input. You have to change the inputs. Okay. And we'll talk a little more specifically about that in just a few moments. But one of the keys is you've got to change the content of your thinking. And one of the ways you can change the content of your thinking is through the law of substitution. And because of the law of control, you know that, hey, I'm going to feel more confident. I'm going to feel calmer about myself because I have control. I actually do have ultimate control over what I think. Now, I might not be able to control it right now in the moment because it's a pattern and it's automatic, but I can control it by changing my inputs, by changing, for example, my self-talk, what I say to myself, what I watch and listen to. If I do that, and because of the law of accumulation and Hebb's law, I realize that over time, and sometimes immediately, I can begin to change what I'm thinking. I can begin to change the way that I'm thinking, my pattern of thinking, so that next week or the week after or the month after, the way that I think is now different than the way that I used to think. The way that I feel when that meeting is coming up is different than the way that I used to feel. The way that I speak is different than the way that I used to speak. Why? Because I've changed the inputs which make up the content of my thinking, right? Now, the next C that's important here, it's not just content, but also the consistency of our thinking. Consistency, and another word is frequency, right? The consistency. So, how consistent do you think this content? How consistent? If you just input some positive stuff once or twice, remember Hebb's law is not going to wire together, so it's probably not going to change your pattern of thinking. Does this make sense? Okay, so if you want to change this kind of thinking here, you want to stop thinking this and you want to start thinking and feeling this way, then you have to consistently, frequently think, fill your mind with new content, with content that's consistent with how you want to think and feel. Does that make sense? And Pro 90D, so we've got you covered. And I'm going to just show you that in a little while. Pro 90D has you covered in the sense that we have very, very specifically designed audios and videos specifically designed for you, people who want to improve their communication skills, their confidence level. They want to feel more calm. They want to think more clearly and speak more clearly. The whole program is designed to do that. And so we give you a lot of the content that you need, and we give you a systematic blueprint that you can apply to help you with these inputs, right? To help you change the inputs, which is the content. And we give you a system, a blueprint that says, here's how consistent you need to do. Here's how frequently you need to do these things. And here's how long you need to do it approximately. It's kind of different for everyone, but there's some averages so that you actually change how you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're speaking. I hope that that makes sense. Now, the next C here that's important is we have the content, we have the consistency, and we have something called a charge. And this is emotional charge. So the more emotionally charged, that is something that you really, really want, the more emotionally charged this content is, the more it sticks. And so let me just give you an example. If you had a very, very negative, embarrassing experience, speaking experience, that was an emotionally charged event, an emotionally charged experience. And because of that, and because of the way our brain works, the neurochemicals involved in processing that thought and the feelings, the experience, the neurochemicals involved, wired in that experience into your memory. That is, it imprinted that experience into your memory. And this is one of the few times where you can instantly create a pattern of thinking when there's something that's emotionally charged. When something emotionally charged happened to you, you can wire in a new way of thinking almost immediately, right? So that's why be very careful how we interpret things, how we think about things, and so forth. So if you had something embarrassing happen to you, that was almost immediately, or it can be, it could have been immediately imprinted into your memory, so that the next time you have a similar experience and you think about it, all of a sudden, almost automatically, you start feeling anxious about it. You start to worry about it. Why? Because it was imprinted, because it was an emotionally charged experience for you. Okay, hopefully this makes sense. Now, watch this. If you want to change that, right? You want to change that, then you change the inputs, you change the content, you make sure that you're consistent in what you are thinking and what you're watching and what you're listening to, right? And if you're able, add an emotional charge to it. So think about something, talk about something that you're excited about, right? That you really, really want to do. And the more emotional charge you can put to the input, the more it's going to stick, the more of an imprint it's going to have. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is the process that you can use to begin to change the content of your thinking. That is, to substitute out thoughts that you don't want with thoughts that you do want. And those thoughts will begin to change how you feel, and that will begin to change how you speak and how you perform. Okay, so the question is, how often do you have to do this, and what is the this that you have to do, and how quickly, how soon can you start to see results? So let's talk about that right now. So one of the inputs that we talked about here, and this is the one that we're going to focus on today. The other ones are part of this, obviously, but it's self-talk, right? It's what you think and what you say to yourself. It's what you think and what you say to yourself. This is one of the things, you have control over all of the other things as well, but this is one of the things that can have an immediate impact on what you're thinking in the moment, what you think today, what you think tomorrow, and can have an immediate impact in many ways on how you're feeling and how you're behaving, is through your self-talk, So what must you do to change the way you think? Well, change what you say to yourself. Be more proactive in what you're thinking. So you can become more aware of what you're thinking moment to moment by talking to yourself. First of all, just by being aware, oh, what am I thinking right now? I'm about to have a conversation. I'm in a conversation. I'm about to have a meeting. What am I thinking about right now? How am I feeling? So you become aware of it. Okay, let me be proactive and let me say this to myself instead of allowing myself to habitually think and feel this way. Do you see that? So instead of just operating out of our old pattern of thinking and feeling and behaving, you're now being proactive, pro 90D, proactive speaking, right? You're being proactive. You're saying, wait a minute, instead of allowing myself to think this, feel this, and act this way, I'm going to proactively think this. I'm going to say this to myself, right? Now, just because you say something to yourself once or twice doesn't mean it's going to change that old pattern immediately. But based on the law of accumulation, based on Hebb's law, what we find is that your thoughts, what you think to yourself, will accumulate. So the more that you think certain things, the more that they accumulate, the more they develop that new neural pattern, that new way of thinking, the more that they become your pattern, your habit, your way of thinking. So what you have to do then is decide, well, what do I need to say to myself on a moment-to-moment basis so that when I have that meeting, when I have that phone call, when I have that presentation, when I have that social situation, I'm not thinking the way I used to think. I'm feeling calm. I'm feeling relaxed. I'm feeling confident. What do I need to say to myself? Well, Pro 90D gives you content. I'm going to show you in just a few minutes. We actually have a series of audios and videos that you can listen to that are what we call self-talk affirmations, and we have some other affirmations that you can listen to that will help change the content of your thinking. And if you listen to them every day, remember consistency and frequency, then it will help to change the content of your thinking. And if you get excited about it, there's an emotional charge, it will imprint, it will impact, right? Imprint or impress those new thoughts much faster than ever before. So self-talk is what you must do, right? It's the what. Why must you do it? Because it's one of the things, one of the big things that you have control over. It's one of the things that you need to be doing proactively on a moment-to-moment basis, because if you don't, you will habitually think the way you've always thought. So you have to be proactive. And how quickly can you expect to see results? Immediately. When you change the way you're thinking in the moment, you can start to experience immediate results. So you'll experience immediate results because you're taking control over what you're thinking right now, which can impact how you're feeling and how you're speaking. But more importantly, the more you change what you're thinking now, what you say to yourself now, the more it changes what you say and think when? Tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and next week. So that you have that interview, you have that meeting coming up a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, the way that you're going to be thinking and feeling and speaking will be very different if you start changing your self-talk when? Tomorrow? Next week? No, right now. You start changing it right now. Now, when you change the content of your thinking, when you change the way that you think, one of the things that happens is you start to feel more confident. And we're going to go deeper into that the next one, but you start to feel more confident. And when you feel more confident, it affects many areas of your life. And one area that it affects is your career, your professional life. And some of you won't really do much about your speech if it's not impacting your professional life, your career, your income. Because if it's social, some people will do something about it. But if it's impacting your career, if you're seeing that it's holding you back, that it's causing you to actually lose money, or if your managers or your leadership says, hey, you need to improve the way that you communicate, your communication skills, or if you see, man, I really should have been promoted, or I'd like to start my own business, but I can't because of my speech, right? I could be earning this, but I'm not because of my speech. So this, what we're talking about right now, can impact your income. And let me just show you some very, very specific examples. So I'm just going to quickly show you these three. This was a gentleman. These are pretty recent too, right? This is Richard, got his PhD. Helped him be confident in his interview, and it led to a job where he's earning $58,000 more than what he was earning. Okay. And then we have Paul, who just wrote me, literally just wrote me, I would say maybe a week ago. He said, Mike, he said, thank you so much. If it wasn't for Pro 90D, I wouldn't have started my own business, and I wouldn't be doing the Zoom calls, right? The assessment, the interview calls that's necessary for me to grow my business. And so he's been able to 5 times, at least that was back then. This was several months ago. I don't know what his income is now, but it helped him increase his income. Now, I have many, many more of these, but I'm only going to show you this one more. Pro90D helped me increase my income by 15,000, not to 15,000, but by 15,000 a year. So whatever you invest in yourself, right? You invest in yourself, in your speech and personal development, especially in your communication skills. Many of you will see a direct return on that, and often very, very quickly. We're talking sometimes tens and tens of thousands of dollars. So here's one that I want you to see from.
My speech was affecting me a lot. I had a stammer, and I wasn't really able to perform in work the way I wanted to, or socially. I was not answering phone calls, I was not taking meetings, I wasn't introducing myself to people, and I was really suffering, and my career was suffering with that. Since Pro 90D, just a year after, and actually I've been benefiting straight away. As soon as I started Pro 90D, I started to benefit from it. But what I've really seen is, when I started a year ago, I was an assistant manager at my job. I was a manager at my job. I just made the move up from assistant manager, but I found the whole interview process to get up to manager really difficult. Since Pro 90D, I have moved up to director at a new firm. I'm now heading up the department at my new firm, and I've had an increase in my wage from I started at 55 at the start of the year, and now I'm on £85,000 a year, which I can only say is thanks and due to Pro 90D and Michael and the support and how he's just changed my life and my speech.
All right. Hopefully you guys are able to hear and see that. Okay, now that's a real example of someone I worked with recently. And so by changing your thinking, changing your feeling, changing your communication skills, changing the way that you behave, you can impact your career. You can impact your income, right? You can increase your income. So if someone says, well, I'm not sure that this will work. I'm not sure that it's worth it. I'm not sure that's worth the investment. I've just showed you just a fraction of the examples that I have, recent examples of people that have increased their income, sometimes within weeks, sometimes within months, that whatever they invested in Pro 90D, they got back many thousands of times, right? Does this make sense? So this is very important. So then when you ask the question, Michael, what is it that we need to be thinking on a regular basis? And how can this process, how can this program help us change the content of our thinking? So what I want to try to do here is to share something with you. Hopefully you'll be able to see this clearly. In the self-study course, which is the very, very best place for you to start, unless you already know that you want to work with us one-on-one. But in the self-study, and I'm going to give you a link to this, in each module, we cover the content that you need to change your thinking. So you can watch it. There's exercises that you can type, you can write about it. You can also listen to it in the bonus mobile app. Now, one of the things I want to show you in this mobile app are the bonuses. So not only do you get the full course, where in each module it addresses how you think. Right? What should you think? How often should you think it? How can you change the way that you speak? Each module does that. How can you present better? How can you interview better? Right? How can you give better presentations? How can you do better in your meetings? But what you also get are a series of self-talk affirmation lessons or sessions or courses that you can just plug in and listen to on a daily basis. So I'm going to give you a link that you can use in just a second here, that you can pop in and use to check out. All right, I'm going to give you this link. Go ahead and take a look at the page that I was just showing you. So you just kind of go through there and take a look and see all the things that you can get in the self-study. Now, one of the things that I'm also going to be sharing with you today before the end of the webinar is, for the next 24 hours only, you can save $100 off that self-study that you're looking at now. So click that link. You can take $100 off, and I'm going to give you a very special link for that, and you're going to get one in the email with the replay. But for today only, you can take $100 off of the price that is normally $397. It'll be $297. That's only for today. That's only for the next 24 hours. Now, hopefully you saved that link, because I want to give you this discount link here. Click that link, save that, because that's the link that you're going to use to take your $100 off, to get the $100 off that self-study. Okay, get the $100 off the self-study. So as you can see, it's a very, very small investment for what you could be getting in terms of changing the way that you think, changing how you feel, and changing how you perform. I want to show you something else real quick. And this is an example of
what happened after I joined Pro90D was, once again, I received that immediate blueprint on how to overcome my speech blocks with the tactics that were presented. Again, like the best way to describe Pro90D is like the Swiss Army knife of smooth speech. Oh, you are getting stuck on this? Use technique number 1. Oh, you are anticipating stuttering and you feel like you're about to get stuck? No problem. Use technique number 2. And just having those building blocks at your back pocket gives you an amount of confidence you haven't even experienced.
All right. So those are just a couple of examples of what the system will do for you. It gives you everything that you need to do what? To change what you're thinking, how often you think it, to also change your speech patterns, how you speak, and to level up your career so that you can earn what you're worth. So I provided you with a link. Now, what I want to do now is 2 more things. Number 1, I've got a few slots open, just a few slots, because I have a meeting pretty soon. For those of you who want to speak with me privately, because you have some doubts or you have some specific questions about how Pro90D can work for you, whether it be the coaching or the self-study. But a great place to start for you today is the self-study. Remember, you only have 24 hours to get that discount. Start with the self-study. And for those of you that decide within, 30 to 60 days, hey, I want to do the coaching, I'll give you a credit. I'll give you a credit for the cost of the self-study. So you start, you say, you know what, this is great, but I think I need some accountability. I think I need some customized, personalized feedback. We'll credit that towards your coaching. But start with the self-study now. Use that link. You'll also get it in email if you're not able to click it for some reason. But I also want to give you a link to book a call with me. Okay, so they're 15-minute kind of laser-focused question and answer calls. And these calls, let me just be very, very clear about this. This is not to give you speech advice. This is not free coaching. These calls are for those of you who say, you know what, I'd like to do the self-study or I'd like to do the coaching. And I'd just like to talk to you personally, Michael. And I have some personal questions or I have some doubts about whether or not this will work for me. Or I just have some questions that I want to answer. Or I just want to see if you're a real person or if this is just a video that someone is playing. We were talking about those of you who want to meet with me, 15-minute session. Hopefully you can see the link there. Go ahead and sign up for today. For today, I have a few sessions for today. Go ahead and sign up for those. And let me answer your questions now. You may have questions about what we talked about, or you may have questions about the system itself. So go ahead and ask me the questions in the chat. And thank you again for letting me know about the audio. Next time I'll just change the batteries anyway. Yeah, what are your questions? What are your questions? I see we have some private questions. Yes, okay, great. Let's see what else. Yeah, any questions for me about the content that we covered? Was there anything that wasn't clear? Anything that you wanted me to repeat? Because we still got about 8 minutes left. Anything that you want me to repeat? Any questions about Pro90D, the system, the process that you'd like to ask me here? I'm here to answer your questions. Okay, so I'll just give you a few minutes. All right, I have anxiety, so I don't breathe properly when talking because of too many thoughts. Okay, all right. So ask me a question. I mean, I can address what you said, but do you have a specific question in there, or do you just want me to comment on that generally? If not, I'll just make a comment about the breathing. Okay, so lots of people join Pro90D who, yes, generally is good. Okay, on breathing. Lots of people join Pro90D who have anxiety, sometimes severe anxiety, sometimes depression, sometimes people are on medication often people get off of medication after they've been in Pro 90D. And yes, we do have a very, very simple breathing exercise inside the program that helps you, number one, relax. But you can find breathing programs just by going, searching YouTube, right? But it's how the breathing fits into this whole process. Remember, Pro 90D is a science-based, holistic system, right? It's a system. So you can pull out any one of the things like the affirmation self-talk or the breathing or the speaking skills. And it's not necessarily going to give you the results that you're looking for. We've designed it as a holistic system because you never know which thing is going to affect you the most. It could be the self-talk and the modeling, or the breathing and the self-talk that affects both how you think and how you speak. So that's why you have to do the whole system. So to answer your question specifically, we do have breathing exercises inside the program. But when you use the breathing exercises inside the entire process, right, what begins to happen is through self-talk, you start to remind yourself to relax, slow down, and breathe, right? So it's not just the breathing exercise. I mean, I've had many, many students and clients say, man, I had a meeting coming up. My thoughts are all over the place. I was feeling anxious. I did the breathing exercises and I was able to get through the interview. I was able to get through the phone call. It was amazing, right? Breathing exercise. But how did that person even remember to do the breathing exercises? Self-talk, right? They were aware, oh, wait a minute, I'm feeling anxious. My thoughts are all over the place. I need to do the breathing exercise. I need to remind myself to do this. So do you see how it fits together? Okay. So did that answer your question? Anxiety, you don't breathe properly, too many thoughts. So as you create this new pattern this new pattern of thinking, and you also practice the breathing and you practice the self-talk, you become aware of how you're thinking and how you're feeling, and the fact that, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to breathe. How many people have I talked to? Literally, of course, they're breathing or else they'd fought, but they're not breathing enough. They're not breathing deep enough, right? They're not breathing frequently enough. So they remind themselves, okay, I need to breathe. I need to breathe deeper. I need to breathe more frequently. And then as you breathe, it has a physiological effect and a psychological effect. Their thinking starts to become clearer. They start to become more relaxed. Does this make sense? Okay. Hopefully that helped. Did that answer your question, or did that address? Yes. You did self-study. How long does this program last and how long should I study per day? Very good question. So the program doesn't really have an end date, right? So you have permanent lifetime access. I just want to check the battery on this right here, make sure it's still good. You have lifetime access, but it's called Pro 90D because we see, generally speaking, that within the first week or two, let's just say within the first 3 weeks, you see results. You start getting results. And I'm going to answer your question, how long each day? But you start to see results in the first few weeks. And this is borne out by studies of habit formation, that often it can take about 18 days to begin to form a habit, in some ways to form a habit. 66 days on average, it's like a couple of months, right? And then all the way up to 256 days, this is called 8 or 9 months, to form some more complex habits, okay? So what we've seen is that within about a 3-month period, or before 3 months, usually within about 2 months, you see consistent results. Your thinking has changed, your speech has changed, you're feeling calmer, you're feeling more confident, you're speaking smoother, generally within a couple of months. How long does this take? Like, how much time does this take every day? Well, here's how you have to look at this. Remember that you have a pattern, you have a current way of thinking, feeling, and behaving, speaking now, right? It's wired in. How much time do you need to put in every day to change that, to replace that with something new? Well, ultimately, you have to immerse yourself, right? Because they're competing. This new way of thinking, feeling, and speaking is competing with one that's wired in. So in order to push to replace the old one, you've got to practice this new way every day, all day, right? If not, the old one will simply come back and take over. So to answer a question, what you learn, you have to put into practice every day, all day, because if you don't, the old one that's already wired in will just continue its habitual way of thinking and feeling and speaking. So to break that down, formal practice, you're looking at something like 45 minutes to an hour. I recommend something called practicing during transitional time. So I don't recommend that anyone sits down for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, but some people do. What you do is you break it into smaller chunks. Some people do it while they're driving. Some people do it while they're cleaning. Some people can do things while they're working, while they're exercising. You do it. You just do a little bit before you have a meeting. So you do in small chunks, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, all throughout the day. And before you know it, you have accumulated the 45 minutes or an hour. The audio listening, remember changing the inputs. You do that whenever you can. Lots of people do it during transitional time. Okay. So I hope that answered your question. How much time each day? How long? All right. So let me see. We've got some other questions. Did you say that we would get with the self-study program? Gabrielle, you have to leave. Thank you for being here. That we could use towards a credit. This is the old way of thinking ever go away. Great questions. Let me answer those questions now. So what did you say that we would get with the self-study? So with the self-study, you get a series of videos, and you also get a mobile app that's audio only because it's just easier for you to listen to. And you get those bonus programs like the self-talk affirmations. You get those in the audio. You also get access to our Slack group. So there's a community in there, and we are really trying to get that community motivated and moving. And so people are interacting. You can go into that group and you can say, does anyone want to practice? Coming up in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have formal practice sessions for people. That's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. So you get the community, you get access to the community and to our coaches in Slack. You get the videos, you get the mobile app, and you get lifetime access. So everything that you see on this page, I am going to put this page up here. Everything that you see on the page, on the link there that says learn more, just go through there. You get all of that. All right. Let's go back to, and remember, for the next day only, you get to take $100 off of that. You're going to get the replay, and you're going to get, that link is right here. Hopefully you can see all three of these. So that's good for the next day only, $100 off. Best time to do it right now. So when I talk about the credit, that's if you do the coaching. So if someone decides, hey, you know what, I want to do the coaching, then whatever you pay for the self-study, if you do the coaching within 30 to 60 days, I'll give you a credit. Whatever you, so let's say you pay $297, I'll take $297 off of the coaching package that you choose. That's what that was. Okay. Does the old way of thinking ever go away, Yvonne? Great question. Yes. For the most part, I'm going to say for the most part, yes, because nothing is really 100% absolute. I'm not going to say nothing, right? Because there are some things that are absolute. Like if I jump out the window, gravity is absolute. I'm probably going to fall. But I'm just thinking about my own experiences. So when I have a webinar or if I have a live speaking engagements, yeah, I might feel excited about that. I feel a little anxious, but I reframe it as being excited. Yes. But I Rick and Vic it. So I don't think the same way and I don't feel the same way that I used to many, many years ago, so that I don't have that old way of that old pattern of thinking anymore. Something might creep in every now and then, but it's very easy for me to push it out. So once I developed this new way of thinking, pattern, habit, I don't really have the old way. Now, if there's a situation that I'm completely unfamiliar with and they're going to be asking me questions that I'm not an expert in, well, I'm going to feel pretty anxious about that, but I'm still going to do the same thing. Right? I'm going to feel more anxious, but I'm still going to Rick and Vic it. So my answer to you is basically yes. The old way of thinking can go away because you're replacing it with a new way of thinking. Okay. All right. Mona, I want to answer Yvonne's question and say that the old way of thinking will eventually go away because your new way of thinking is now dominating. Michael always told me this, but it didn't quite register until it gradually happened to me and others. All right, Mona, thank you. Yes, she answered it spot on. So she was, if this is the same Mona that I think it is, she's one of my clients and she's doing an amazing job. In fact, Mona, let me just see something here. If this is you, yes. Okay, great, great. How much is a private coaching package? So that's a great question. What I want to do is I'm going to pop a link in here and you can take a look at that. I'm going to pop a link in here for you. Okay, hopefully you can click that link. That'll take you to the coaching page. 3 packages, 6-week, 8-week, 12-week. I think one of the best packages is the 8-week, right? Because we meet basically 5 times consecutively. We have a 45-minute to an hour orientation where I walk you through everything you need to do. And then we meet 4 times consecutively. And then we spread the other sessions out over the next couple of months. That's the best one. But if you can't afford that one, the 6-week works as well. It's just the 8-week and the 12-week, we build momentum faster. But let's just say you just can't afford it, then do the 6-week. That's better than not doing it at all. But if you're not sure or whatever, then start with the self-study. Start with the self-study. And again, if you want to switch up coaching within about 30 to 60 days, then I'll credit you for that. Okay, see if we got amazing talks. Thank you. All right, what about the formal group? We'll get that as well with the self-study. Yes, so that's in Slack, and there is a community there. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to actually start some formal sessions that will be held usually on Sundays at either 11 or 12 Eastern time. And we have our coaches, or at least one coach, because I right now just have the one coach, but we have some assistants or coaches in training who will be participating in those groups, and we'll be doing some structured activities. But in the community, you can also pop in and say, hey, I like to practice speaking with someone. And people say, okay, I'm available. So you can do that in the community. That comes with it. All right. Some people go longer than 12 weeks. If so, can they save on adding more sessions? So yeah, let's say you decide, and a lot of people actually do the 12 weeks, but I don't have room all the time for 12 weeks. I do have 1 or 2 openings now for 12 weeks, just 1 or 2. And if you feel like you need more sessions, you can add, and yes, it's at a discounted price. But I wouldn't really worry about that because most people are good after the 12 weeks. And if they do come back, sometimes it's because they've reached a very, very high level. They've reached the plateau and they come back maybe several months later, a year later, they want to go to another level. But I would say just focus on the first 12 weeks and you should be good. My job is to get you so that in the 8 weeks or 12 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever it is, that you can be your own coach and you're ready to go. It's not to actually have people stay on with me and spend more money. That's not my goal. My goal is to get you out there speaking and ready. But yes, you can continue and you can save. All right. Any other questions? Any other questions for me? Okay. All right, let me just see something here. Yeah, any other questions? No other questions? Okay. Let's see. All right, let's see. It's hard to apply things I learned in the present moment because I'm afraid. What is the best way to overcome fear? It's hard to apply things in the present moment. Okay, so that's a great question. Essentially, if you think about this, and this actually, that's a really good question because a lot of people, they learn their new way of speaking or they learn something and because of fear they're afraid to apply it in the moment. But remember, what did I say earlier? I said, remember I said that it's not so much what you do in the moment that counts, that matters. It's what you do in all the moments leading up to that moment, right? So it's what you do today, and it's what you do tomorrow. So strategically, what one could do is in a lower or no pressure speaking situation, you begin to apply things that you're learning. You apply it when you're offline, meaning by yourself. You start changing your way of thinking. You start watching and listening, right? There's no pressure there. There's no fear there, right? You start to change it so that you actually start to feel more confident. One of the things that our students and clients will tell us is that as a result of going through the program, they actually start to feel, it's one of the first things that happen, they feel more confident, partially because they know that they have a science-based system. So they feel more confident, so they're willing to get out and try new things, right? And when they're willing to do it, and they set realistic expectations, which we help you do in the system, right in the beginning, and you understand this is just like learning a new language. You're not going to become fluent immediately, so you're going to still have those bumps. But you get out there and you find people with whom you're comfortable with to start to practice and use the things that you're learning. And lo and behold, because of the law of accumulation, the Hebb's law, you start to see those changes. You start to get that traction that you need. Okay, so you can incrementally improve yourself and ease yourself into situations where you feel more comfortable, where you have more control, to build momentum, to build that confidence. Does that make sense? And does that answer your question? So just because you're going through the system and program doesn't mean you have to jump right out there in super high pressure speaking situations. Some people do, some people have to, but there are ways that you can incrementally build that momentum, right? And build that confidence. All right. So 12 weeks of self-study. Last question was asked above the sales question. Sorry, above Kim's question. To some people. So after 12 weeks, can you stay? Oh, sorry. Yeah, didn't see. After 12 weeks, you can stay in self-study for as long as you want for formal group activities. Yeah. So yes, once you're in Pro 90D, you stay in it for as long as you want. Remember, Pro 90D is not really designed as a therapeutic program. It's not designed to just get you up to par, okay? To say that, if Mona's still here, she can tell you that. She's actually out there and in charge of traveling the nation and helping to open up branches of a business where she has to do workshops and trainings and stuff like that. And we just go through client after client after client after student who went from stuttering, sometimes severe, sometimes not so severe, but still stuttering, that held the career back, went from there to getting out there and becoming excellent speakers. So yes, after the 12 weeks or however many weeks, you get to stay in the program and you get to stay in the Slack group because Pro 90D is designed to help make you an excellent speaker. And so you're going to continue to use the things that you learn to keep getting to higher and higher levels. So the answer is yes, you can stay in. Okay. All right. Michael, do you personally consciously breathe in a lot of air when you start speaking? I just did right then. So when I'm public speaking, I do breathe in more. In fact, In a lot of my videos, you can actually hear me breathing. That's because breathing gives me power. Breathing gives you power. When you have breath, you have the power to speak, the power to vibrate those vocal cords, to move those words. When you breathe more deeply and more frequently, you help keep yourself relaxed. You help keep your thinking, your mind clear. So when I'm public speaking, I have a tendency to breathe deeper and to breathe more. In regular conversations, I generally don't breathe as deep or as much, unless for some reason I'm feeling anxious or something, or I'm speaking Spanish, then I will breathe more and breathe deeper. Hopefully that answered your question. All right. Yes, that makes sense. Boom, boom, boom. Yes, it makes sense. Lately, I've been trying to prove to myself that I can do it, even under pressure, and I put myself in social interaction situations that scare me a little. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. I can speak well. I'm talking to myself, by myself, but as soon as I get ready to say something to someone, get all choked up and start stuttering. Why is that? Great question. And we've got 2 more questions. Mona, you can also jump in and answer any questions. I wish I could bring you on, but I have to figure out how to do that, how to invite you as a host the next time. But let me answer this question. Why is it that when you start talking to someone else? Well, a part of it obviously has to do with a little bit of fear and anxiety, but it's your speaking identity, right? And Pro 90D helps you change the way you speak, the way you think, and the way you see yourself, your identity, your belief. So you have an identity. We have identities for every aspect of our life, for how we talk on the phone, for how we talk to family members, to how we talk to people in authority, how we talk to people that we don't know. We have identities for all of those things. So what happens is you have an identity that says, oh, when I'm by myself or when I'm talking to certain people, I'm fine, I'm relaxed, I don't really stutter. But when I'm talking to someone else, no matter who it is, or talking to certain kinds of people, I begin to stutter. That's your belief, right? That's not necessarily factual or true in reality, but because you believe it, it becomes true for you. So what we have to do, in fact, it's a pattern, right? It's a pattern that, bam, as soon as I'm around someone or I see someone, it's like a program, it kicks in and you automatically begin to struggle with your speech. So what do? We change that pattern. We replace that pattern with a new one. And we do this through the system, right? This holistic system. You start doing certain things, and then you have to actually call it offline and online. So you do your offline practice, then you absolutely must get out and you find situations and you find people with whom you can begin, call this online, to speak and to practice and to try. Just like speaking another language for me, Spanish. So I can probably speak fluently by myself. As soon as I start talking to someone, bam, start getting stuck, right? So what do, I keep doing it until I start feeling more relaxed and more confident. And I try to do it around people around whom and with whom I'm more comfortable, right? So that I can practice with them more, so that I can speak with people that maybe I'm not comfortable with. So you incrementally ease yourself into it. But that's part of the process. Hopefully I answered your question, Lachelle. Great question. Love it. All right. Let's see. Self-study come with private sessions to self-study in between. So the self-study doesn't come with private sessions, but the private coaching comes with the self-study. Does that make sense? The self-study is where the program sits. Well, it sits in here, right? But we put it out there. So when you sign up for coaching, yes, you get you get the self-study. When you sign up for the self-study, because it's a self-study, you don't get private sessions. All right, it's like I start to fumble my words or I open my mouth and nothing comes out. It's very frustrating. Understood. That's what this process is designed to do, is to help you change that. Remember, it's all pattern. It's all habit. It's all neurological. And that's the good news, because you can replace it. You can rewire your brain to think, feel, and speak differently. Your brain is no different than anyone else. Even though we're all different, our brains are essentially the same, all works the same way. We can create new patterns, right? We can create new patterns. This absolutely works. You have to believe it, right? You have to believe that it's going to work, that it can work. And you can look at the science and go, okay, the science says that this works. So then all I have to do is remember, you got to be consistent, because that's the way your brain works, right? And then it'll work. Okay. All right, guys. I've got another meeting or some meetings coming up. Let me just check something. I just want to check. Okay. Great. All right. I'll take a couple more minutes. Any other questions? Any other questions for me? Any other questions? Okay. So if you want to book a session with me, then you should see that link there. Book your call now. 15 minutes, answer your questions. You don't need to book a call. If you don't want to, just take advantage of that discount today. That's going to expire within a day. If you need to learn more, that link is up there as well. So all three of those links are there. You're going to get an email. I'm not sure when, but it'll come pretty soon after this webinar once the video is ready. So you'll get a replay along with links to get access to the self-study. There is a money-back guarantee, but do not join the self-study if you're not going to commit. It's the way your brain works, right? You can't get in and expect immediate results in some things because your brain can't change itself immediately in most cases. It's going to take some consistency. So make sure that you're committed, just as you would if you're going to learn a new language. You're not going to get in and expect to be fluent in a day or even in a week, right? You can expect to see some results, but get into it, be committed, and you will see results because it's how our brains work. But we do give you that money back guarantee, but you have to make sure that you do the work. So if you've done the work over a period of time and you didn't see any results, which is virtually impossible, but if that does happen, we'll say, okay, this is just not for you. All right. So there's no risk on your part. There's only all upside. Okay. Any other final questions before we wrap this up? Let's get in here and make sure there's no other questions. Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you, guys. I will see you all the next time.